Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research based information that fits your family. We're going to talk about the realities of being a parent and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of two littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Lori Cordles, parent of three in two different life stages.
Oh.
Two are launched, I know, and one is still in high school. And today we are talking about those two of mine that are launched and they're in early adulthood, or it's that idea of emerging adulthood. And
A term.
I still kind of struggle with is that me? Am I the parent of emerging adults? Huh. I guess I
love
am.
that term. I love that term. And so, every episode this season, we've had this little precursor, this little but wait, we want to tell you that
Yes.
kids develop at different rates and that development, and we're going to talk about it generally. And I was like, do we say that in this adulthood episode? But I kind of think we do, because some emerging and early adults are quicker to move out. Some are quicker to be financially independent. Some might be quote unquote late bloomers. And so there is still this idea of this rate of development is
Exactly.
different. And so we're going to give research-based information about this stage and some suggestions and talk about some reality around how we can help inform our parenting decisions. But yeah,
exactly.
It's still there.
It is still there. And again, also recognizing that they still have temperament influencing their move into adulthood. They still have the environment which they're growing up in impacting the rate at which they move into adulthood. And so there are still these factors, their genetics, that are impacting whether they move into or out of things more quickly. So
Yes.
we're going to define it though, of course, first for you,
Gotta.
because I think we're being very vague on purpose. But the definition that we're looking at specifically is this idea of emerging adults or early adults. So this concept is actually fairly recent, and there's some differences in opinion on what this really means. So tell us about that.
Yes. So Arnett is kind of the researcher who coined this phrase and is kind of considered the father of emerging adulthood. And really it was the late 90s, early 2000s when this phrase even came around. So we're still really figuring it out. But as he defined it, it is a new conception of development from the period through the late teens into the 20s with a focus on ages 18 to 25. But I've also seen it from 18 to 29. So,
yes.
But really the big thing is that this life stage is not confined to a specific age. It's more typical. The big characteristic is, and I love this, I think this is so accurate, the freedoms of adulthood. So someone who has the freedoms of adulthood, but does not have all of the responsibility characteristic of adulthood. So
yes.
Some of the freedoms, but not all of the responsibility. So some of the freedoms to choose when you'd like to come and go, what you do for a job, how you want to spend your money, but maybe not all the responsibilities of paying bills or being responsible for another human being, or just some of that stuff. Some of the freedoms, not all the responsibility.
Exactly. And that kind of goes along with that idea of, there may be some of you out there saying, why are you still talking about child development? These people are 18 to 25. There are laws around the nation that actually say they are old enough to do things. You should be done talking about child development. But essentially, we aren't ever done parenting, right? So we kind of felt like we still needed to talk about this age. And we've been telling you for weeks that their brains are not fully developed yet. So we actually can't stop talking about it until their brains are developed fully, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and we once we're a parent forever kind of thing. And I think that's a really great point. There's still some new parenting skills required of us in this stage of parenting an adult. Absolutely.
Yes. And according to Bartlett and Bartlett, there are actually several qualities that fit this unique developmental stage. So we're going to review some of these qualities. And remember, all along, again, their brain is still developing.
Yes.
Their brain is still developing. So, as we think about these factors and these unique qualities, there's some brain development coming into play.
Mm.
Yes, definitely big time. So, okay, a couple of these are the idea of identity exploration. So, they're exploring what is my identity in this world? Am I going to go straight out of high school into a job? Am I going to be in the military? Am I going to be a college student? Am I going to be in a full time relationship? Am I going to be a parent? They're exploring these identities and trying to figure out what fits essentially. I'll give you a quick story. When I taught college, I remember thinking to myself, who are we to think that 18-year-olds should be deciding their college major? Right? The thing they're going to do for the next 30 years, you have to decide at 18. Okay, anyway, that
Uh,
is a
maybe that's why I
whole
changed my major 4 times.
yes, exactly. Okay, this is identity exploration.
Yes.
There's also experimenting that happens during this time alongside that identity exploration. They're experimenting. They have all of these options and opportunities right in the palm of
Yes.
their hand. Suddenly there are laws again that say they can do this, they
Mm,
must do this, right?
mm,
And so they have these opportunities and options. And so the idea that they have optimism around, wow, look at all of this. And then the third unique developmental factor that happens during this time, that fear and suddenly overwhelming, pressure of, I have all these decisions to make. I don't know how to make these all of these decisions. I've been allowed to make some decisions, but now do I have to make all of these? And they might feel that they have to make them all when as a parent we can say, "Yoo-hoo, we're still here. We can help you if you want." I have a child that went from college to launch just in the last several weeks, and I definitely saw that overwhelming sense of, "Oh my goodness, what's I have no idea what's next." And,
mm.
there were things that happened to her in the last couple weeks where I was like, "Oh my goodness, who is this kid?" And I had to recognize she's overwhelmed with all these decisions she thought she was gonna have to make on her own.
Yes,
How about
and it
some other
really makes
factors?
I'll say it makes me think of this. I've heard this phrase like, "I need an adultier adult."
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
like, I'm kind of a fake adult. Like, I need an
Yeah.
adultier adult to help me. But like, yeah, that like instability of like, I don't know what's coming. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good at this. How do people
Right,
know how to pay taxes? How do people know how to do this?
right.
Like all of that stuff. And so, but a few
Mhm.
other factors that are tend to be true of this stage. One is this feeling of in between. You said the
Oh,
phrase, "What's next?"
mhm,
Because it's like, well, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of doing this thing right now. Or even if, whether like maybe in college, like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, but right now I'm taking these classes.
mhm.
Or, if you're working a job, like, this is the job, I need this to pay my rent, but I don't know if I want to do this forever. But so this feeling of like in between or in
Yeah.
transition is really common to this stage. And then the last two kind of go together. One being that this stage is typically very self-focused, right?
Mm,
If you're taking college
definitely.
classes, if you're in the military, if you're working your job, it can be a very independent, like very focused on yourself, the goals you have or the things you're thinking about. So it can be a very self-focused stage. And at the same time, it can also sometimes be a very other focused stage. Maybe it's a
Yes.
relationship they're in that they're clinging to, or that almost makes it sound bad. I don't mean it bad. But like investing themselves in other people. In my friend has this thing going on and I don't feel like I know what's going on with my life, but I'm really gonna help them. And so
Mhm.
sometimes they can focus that energy because they feel not sure, they can might really focus their energy into others as well. So, as I think
Yeah.
about these, kind of 6 things of like they're exploring their identity, they're experimenting, they feel like I don't really know what I'm doing, and also this like I'm in between, and I like focused on the things that I want in my life, while maybe sometimes getting a little enmeshed in other people.
Mm.
That, like, if you are hearing these things, and whether it's all six or one of them, and you're hearing this and you're like, that is my kid. You are not alone. Like, this tends to be true of this stage, that it's like, what is going on with you? Who is this person?
Yes.
Or you suddenly are trying things, like experimenting, right? Trying new things. I almost joined the skydiving club in college, and I am afraid of heights, like very afraid of heights. But like,
Yes.
I wanted to try things.
Mhm.
And so it can sometimes, like, who is this person? And it can be typical of this stage because of these factors, for sure. So what stands
Absolutely.
out to you? You have kids. Well, now
I
more than
do.
one kids at this stage, and I
Yeah.
obviously do not.
2/3 of my children are currently emerging adults. Yes.
Yes.
And I tried taekwondo in college, because I suddenly
Mm,
had all of these options at my fingertips, and I am not an aggressive person, and I mean
mm,
that's not what it's about. But I learned, that
mm.
experimentation, that I can try this. That I think is what stands out to me about these stages is, two different children, right? Two very different children temperamentally. They experienced and tried things differently. They explored things differently. They have different levels of confidence. They have different levels of focus on others and themselves. And so I think that yes, all six of those really did stand out to me. Like, yes, those were my two children that are currently in
Yes.
that, and the idea that I still parented them differently in
Mm,
those in this particular stage. I still am parenting them differently.
yes.
Um, and even though Wen went through it, I couldn't say I was very prepared yet for the second one. I mean, I was,
Mm,
but I wasn't. So I don't know if is
yes.
that an answer? What
Well, just,
stands
yeah,
out
but,
to
like,
me?
it's different and
Yeah,
the
it was
same.
different and the same.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes. Well, and I even think, like, I'm one of 6, and so not all of us, we have kind of an age gap in our family, but, like, between my siblings and I just think of the different things that were happening, like, some had a child during this stage, some were a traditional college student, some were a non-traditional college student, some went into the full-time workforce, like, some moved out, worked
Yes.
part-time, and weren't sure where they were headed, like, and just all of the differences, but still similarities.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And
And
actually, oh, go
you
ahead.
just go with it, right? I mean, I think that was kind of like, okay, just go with this. Like,
Mm,
I have this child development background, but I still needed to essentially let my children's temperament, um, their situation, who they were evolving with as a person, kind of be my guide,
mm,
honestly.
yes. And I think that really there's this other term. So, we're talking a lot about emerging adults. There's feels like a little more parenting action, in
Yes.
this transition stage. But oh yeah, also early adults and middle adults who parent at all these stages. But in previous episodes, we've mentioned that there's this debate about each stage, about,
Mhm.
like, some are like, no, it's the milestones that define it. And others are like, no, 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 it's the age that defines it. And it's still the case. Like, that is
Yes.
still the debate here as we think about emerging adults and adults. But actually, there's this term that I love from Horowitz and Bromnick in 2007, and they refer to this in between stage that Arnett calls emerging adults. They call it contestable
I love
adulthood.
that.
And I'm like, yeah, it's up for debate. Like,
Yes.
it's contestable. You can say, like, I contest. I do not agree. You're an adult. Like, that is,
Yes.
if you and your child or adult or whatever, if you have a
Yes.
disagreement or debate about, like, I'm an adult. No, you're not. Do you know what I still did for you? Like, if
Mhm.
that is whether a conversation you have or that you mentally have, you might have an emerging adult.
Yes. Definitely that I'm mentally having this conversation. I'm mentally having this argument. Yes. Oh, yeah. Well,
Mhm.
and as I think about parenting an early or emerging adult, their status of an adult is, I mean, what is that, right? We have these national laws that say, yes, you're an adult. No, you're not. Yes,
You're
you
an
can
adult,
do
but not an
this.
adult.
Right? You can't do this, but you need to do this. Like, you need
Mm,
to register, but you can't purchase, right?
Oh,
These
yeah.
kinds of things. And as parents, we also like we still make these decisions or have these rules like you must do this, but you have to decide this. And I
Yes.
think, okay, well, yeah, we still have these responsibilities for them, but they still haven't had all the experiences that we had. And
Mm.
sometimes when there are big decisions, like we're as a parent, we think, well, they're too young to make that decision. So it is contestable. It's so darn contestable, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I remember when I was learning this for the first time about emerging adults, I was literally in college, like, this is me. I've got some of the freedom, but not all the responsibility. And man, if
Yes.
I knew what a golden time that was. But
Oh,
but then when I learned more about this, and then I actually wrote a paper on this in grad school, and because I'm so fascinated by it. And so there is this argument, again, like I said, this debate. And some would say, like, so the question is, when does adulthood begin?
mm,
Like, when, yeah, is it 18? Is it,
mm,
And so one school of thought is that demographic factors. And so that would be like once you're a certain age, once you're
right.
married, once you own a home, once you're full-time employed, once you're a parent, once you've completed formal education, there's this whole list. And so that's one school of thought. And then the other school of thought is individualistic markers. Things like accepting responsibility for yourself, being financially independent, making your own decisions. So there's like, yeah, what is it? And I think honestly, because it's contestable because it's like, well, I'm an adult. No, you're not. Like, I think that shows that we need to like give our kids grace through this and like give grace ourselves. Like, does it serve us to argue about, right? Does it serve our relationship with our kids to argue about whether or not they're an adult? Like,
Exactly.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know that I think it does.
I think that I can literally hear myself saying this phrase to each of my children. You are 21. You're
Oh.
21. And to me, that was that argument of you are an adult. However, I will tell
Yeah.
you, I use that same phrase on a different child, and the age I used was different. My response at that time with that particular child was, you are 19. You
Mm.
are 19. And at that time with that child, essentially what I was saying is, you are an adult.
Yes.
And so it is
Mm.
different. I love
Yes.
what Arnett says that emerging adulthood is the only period in life where nothing is normative when it comes to these demographics. Like essentially saying, you know what, is so independent on
Mm.
everything.
Yes.
There is no right answer, and there is no magic line to draw in the sand that says, "You are now an adult. You have now
Mm.
entered the land of adulthood." Right? Which again, just sends us right into that phrase of what do we say at the Signs in Parenting? There's no right way to
Yes.
parent, right?
Yes.
So
There's
there's no
no
right.
right way
Yeah.
to become an adult.
No.
Like, there's not only one way that our kids and not there's not only one way we did it, like, how you became an adult and how I became an adult looks different,
Exactly.
and so there's not one right way. There's more than one way to go through this transition to adulthood, and yeah, I just think about the relationship, if I'm honest, not being that far from the status of an emerging adult, like,
Exactly.
I am past emerging adulthood, but not, like, so far past it.
But
But
I
and
am
then
obviously the adultier adult
yeah,
in
you
this
are the adult
podcast.
here
I
adult.
am the adultier adult in this podcast.
Yes, but I do have a younger sister who is very much in this emerging adulthood stage, and so getting this opportunity that I'm spending a lot more time with her and all of these things, it's just interesting to see this play out and the kind of, like, guidance and, like, coming alongside I get to do, but I'm also not her parent, like,
Exactly. Nope.
but is interesting.
Yes.
So, one other thing that is worth mentioning, and that's in a lot of the research, is this idea of the renegotiation
Mm,
that
mhm.
happens in this stage of like when our kids move from kids to adults. And whether that's in emerging adulthood, of there's this limbo time, or in early adults, that we got to renegotiate and reevaluate and reappraise the
Mhm.
relationship that we have. And it's one of the biggest challenges for parents is
It is.
coming to terms with that adult status of their child. And so there's research from Aquilino that suggests that when parents are reluctant or unable to accept that adult status of their child, can actually hinder their kids' development. And
Mm.
so it's complicated. And they even say that this can be even harder if the adult child is still living at home. And so it is, it's like,
Yes.
this is a complicated, like, they're an adult. How do we
Mhm.
accept? How do we, renegotiate and change this power dynamic? It's tough.
I love that word renegotiate.
Mhm.
And that is important because that involves two people.
Mm.
Like, it's not just the decision of one
Ugh,
person. It involves
yes.
that two-party dyad kind of thought process of both people are involved in this. And Ellen Galinsky, who we've also been talking about, the parenting stages, right? Setting this parent up for the idea that there's a departure. And she
Mm.
talks about this age of child that we have as a parent, that this parenting stage is the departure stage.
Mhm.
And Arnett even refers to it as this is helping to promote more psychological growth and
Yes.
independence when they leave home. And I can't help but see the big red sign that says exit in my
Oh,
head. As I think about this stage, and I'm thinking
yes.
about my two children in this stage, like exit, they're leaving my home. One has left my home.
Yes.
Exit. And all of the
Exit.
feelings that go along with that, but still that idea of we are renegotiating our relationship in a different way.
Yes. And I think, yeah, Ellen Galinsky talks about how the big thing that's happening at this is departure stage for a parent,
Mhm.
renegotiation, but also the reflection. Like the
Yes.
reflection that happens of like this my child's lifetime that I've been parenting them and how the dynamics
Mhm.
are shifting and all of those things. And yeah, that idea of exit. And the research does, it does talk about like if a child's living at home and like in that can be complicated. And Arnett talks about that sometimes the best thing to promote responsibility and independence and growth is for them to move out. And
Mhm.
that's hard too. Or maybe
Mhm.
it's not hard, right? Sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
yes, please be free. um,
Yes.
but I also just want to acknowledge that is, we always talk about research and reality here, the
Mhm.
science of parenting. And so there is some research that points to that can help with the relationship between an adult parent and an adult child is them not
Mhm.
residing together. But also there is your own reality. There are factors that are true for your specific family, for your specific child, for your specific situation that help inform that decision. Research is one part of it. Um, that you can consider and can help you make an informed decision, but only you can decide what's best. Well, I should only say only you and your adult child can decide what's best for you guys and for your relationship. Because I do think that is a huge, yeah, like I said, not being that far from it myself. I think
Mhm.
emerging in early adulthood, it kind of is, we've had this whole foundation of parenting a child, and now the whole rest of our relationship with our child is going to be adult parent, adult child.
Exactly.
So
Though
how we interact and renegotiate at this
yes.
stage, yeah,
Mhm.
it's where we're
Absolutely.
gonna be forever.
Absolutely. And that is one of the biggest things we have to do. So if we were going to
Mm,
move into this reality phase of
yes,
our podcast, you know, talk a little bit about that, some of those strategies that we have to take with us into this stage.
definitely. So some strategies. One is that our biggest job is to renegotiate.
Mhm.
There are things like there's research that tells us that emerging adults don't tend to care as much about family traditions and rituals as their parents do, and
Mhm.
that they want to make their own decisions. And we have to renegotiate instead of always being the parent or always
Mhm.
being the one in charge. And so it's a big shift in power dynamics to be two adults who coexist, which ties right
Absolutely.
into our second tip, which is to practice acceptance.
Yes.
So our emerging adults are going to do some things we love and some things that we're like, what are you thinking?
I do not love that decision.
Yes, and they might do things differently than you did
Mhm.
or differently than you think they should do now, but it's a natural part of becoming an adult. And so that we can practice acceptance alongside those things.
Absolutely. And a couple other strategies. We've talked all along about giving our children decision making skills. And so,
Mhm.
as they, even as they were toddlers, we offered them choices. And so now in these early adult years, they're able to show us how they
Yes.
can take on more responsibility, how they can navigate the world independently. You've taught them so many skills throughout their life. And now you get to kind of see them carry those things out in their own ways. And
Yes.
that means that if something fails, it cannot be our job then to blame or shame. Like, I think of the
Mm.
phrase, "See, I told you so." I mean,
Mm.
that phrase is really a blaming or shaming phrase, and it doesn't help build that bridge between the renegotiated parties of two adults,
Yes.
right? And so it becomes very important that as they're taking on more responsibility and navigating this independent world, that we support them even through their mistakes. Now,
Mm.
recognizing that also as an adult parent, you need to set boundaries, right? You need
Yes.
to set boundaries that protect your safety and health as well. But building a bridge between us as, you know, two adult parties, is really important. So then I guess it would be the fourth strategy would be to find ways that you can seek joy, find joy in all of those changes that happen between that relationship in this stage. So as you see your child experience the world, you might now find that you have more time and availability for things that you kind of set aside while raising
Yes.
them. I've taken on a little bit of extra school myself, and finding joy in being able to say, "Oh, I can do this because I don't have to do the carpool run every 15 minutes, right? I have a free night because I don't have
Mm.
to, be at this activity." And so as the parent and as you've renegotiated your roles, you're their support, but you also have the opportunity to now look back at yourself and the things that you like. And that's important for them to see you do that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You're both 2 whole people.
You are
And you've been a whole
absolutely.
person while you've been a parent, but there may have been times that you had to prioritize things your kids needed from you. And so, yeah, that
Absolutely.
renegotiation can also come with a little bit of regaining some things for
Exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So if I were to give any advice to
Ooh,
parents who
yes.
have
I
children
wasn't
in
sure
this
whether to
stage,
ask. I'm glad to hear you ready to give some
I
advice.
um honestly, I think that two big words stand out to me, and I know you won't be surprised at one of them, but one of the words is respect. So,
Yes.
respecting their decisions, even if they are different from ones that you would make now as an adult, even if they're different as from ones that you would have made as a young adult yourself, respecting their decision, and if that decision turns out to have maybe not been a good decision, supporting them and helping them to lift themselves up from
Mm.
that poor decision. There may be times where you're going to have to repair, which would be the second word.
Mm.
You're going to have to repair the bridge because maybe you did say, "I told you so." And repairing that bridge between you means letting them know that you are there to always listen. You're always going
Mm.
to listen. Sometimes you might also offer advice, but always you're there to listen. And I think I I hope that that is what my two launched children know
Yeah.
that they can come to me for, is that I will listen. I know sometimes I have to really scrunch my toes up in my shoe or bite my tongue literally or squeeze my fingers really tight so that I don't give unsolicited advice. and that I keep listening. But that
Yes.
idea of respecting and asking for respect back. We don't have to just allow our adult children to disrespect us or disrespect
Mhm.
our home or disrespect our decisions. It's a mutual respect. But also then recognizing that there are still going to be times where we're going to have to repair. And just like we've said in all the other stages, we're the adult. And so that repairing may have to come from us first.
Yes.
So
Mm.
that's all
So
I
much
got.
good stuff. I'm so glad. I was like, should I ask her if she's got advice? Maybe she doesn't want to. Maybe I should ask her. So I'm glad you offered it up. So this does bring us to our section that we like to call the Stop, Breathe, Talk space, where our producer, Mackenzie DeYoung, gets to come in and she asks us a question on the topic of today. And we don't really know what she's going to ask. So, hey, Kent.
Hello. So today I don't think I've ever related to a podcast more today's. I can't lie. So I am a 28, almost 29-year-old, and I still think I'm in that emerging adulthood stage. In fact, my sister gave me a set of pens for Christmas a year or two ago, and you mentioned something.
I need an adult to your adult is what the pen
Yes.
says.
And this is also very true of me. I'm a very reluctant adult.
I'm very
I need a pen that says very reluctant adult. I like that.
Right?
Then I get the one that says adult to your adult, right? I'm the
You
adult to your adult.
You are the adult to your adult for all of us. So this question is coming from me as somewhat of an emerging adult, or some of the experiences I've been through, something I know I've talked to Mackenzie about experiencing before. As an emerging adult, as we go out in the world, something that's expected of us, well, I don't know if it's expected of us or we expect it of ourselves, but it's this idea that as I am entering the workforce or as I'm entering the world, like I know my stuff. I know what I'm talking about, but at the same time, I have absolutely no idea what's going on, right? How, as a parent, 'cause I guess this comes from the experiences in like work settings where you feel like people don't respect you. This doesn't happen always, but sometimes you can get that feeling of like people don't respect you because of your age. And as the emerging adult, I can get that feeling in my head like, yeah, I don't feel like I know what I'm talking about either, but at the same time, but I do know what I'm talking about, right? So how as a parent can we help our emerging adults navigate that feeling and navigate that transition into the world as well?
Ooh,
that's a good one. I've got a couple things that come right to mind.
Okay, you go.
One is a term called imposter syndrome. And so it can be the idea of feeling like you don't belong in a certain space and that you're about to be exposed as a fraud and people don't think you belong there and you don't, and everybody knows it, but you don't. And so and this can happen like related to age, related to culture, related to race, like all of these different things. And so that's a term called imposter syndrome. And so helping as a parent, I would say helping our emerging adult recognize what they do bring to the table and how they do belong. So if it's related to your job, like you were hired for this job because you are competent, and sometimes it is that factor of encouragement, but also a willingness to consider. And so like a willingness to consider someone offering up a suggestion, and not that you're like, if another coworker or whoever would give you advice, not that it's to blindly accept it, but encourage our emerging adults to be open to considering. Like maybe this is helpful information down the road. And I can even think of times when I have received good advice from people that I was not ready to accept at the time. And so I think encouraging in our emerging adults, like helping them understand that they are competent, and that they have abilities, even when they don't feel confident, and that like I am capable and I can do it. So I think it's that, and then encouraging them to be open-minded, to be willing to hear experience.
Oh, I love those. Okay, so then mine are related to that idea of helping them tap into their own toolbox
Mm.
And so that comes from this idea that first I need to listen, again, what I was talking about before, and not give advice. Like they might be coming to me asking, "Mom, I cannot believe that this is happening. I I am so frustrated with this." And we might feel that sense of, "Oh, they're asking me for advice finally. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for them to come back from home for 3 weeks and now they're here and now I get to give them advice." And taking a pause and just listening and saying things like, "Well, tell me more."
Mm.
Even something like, "Wow, how did you feel about that?" And asking them then, "Well, what do you think you want to do? Or what do you think you want to say?" And the idea behind that is actually, instead of me jumping in to give them advice, which they potentially could have literally been asking me for, resisting that and showing them that, guess what? Like they already had the answer to their problem. And they just had to take a step back from all of that emotion that
Mhm.
was swirling, and that there it is. Their answer was right there within them and their selves. And I definitely know that there was an evening where my daughter called me and she was fired up about something that was happening at her job. And I said, "Wow, oh man, that would frustrate me too. What are you going to do? Like, what do you think you're going to say?" "Well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how the email is going to go." And I was like, "Wow, okay, so how might they receive that?" "Well, they could receive it this way, but at least it says this." And I was like, "Yeah, and okay, well, tell me another way that you might do this." And so just essentially, I didn't ever give her the words
Mhm.
for the email that was going to go back to her boss or her supervisor. But in the end, she created this fabulous response of, a misunderstanding. And what happened was that her boss said, "Wow, this was a really excellent point. I appreciate you coming to me in this manner. First party communication was so
Yes.
important. I'm glad that you displayed these behaviors." And I mean, it's all because they were her words and they were
Mm.
her skills. And as much as I wanted to give her the advice,
Yes.
as much as I wanted to say, "That's right, they are disrespecting you, Kenzie, because you're younger." I
Oh,
was able to say, "Kenzie, you have these skills."
so I
Mhm.
just thought of in a kind of a picture of sometimes you just need your mom to be like, "It's all right. You can do it."
Mhm.
And it brings me
Yes.
back to, like, when we talked about toddlers or when we talked about those shy, inhibited kids
Mhm.
that need a second just to hide behind their mom's leg. I know I'm too tall to,
Right?
like, that'd be a little weird, but the idea of, like, sometimes I just need to, like, hide behind my mom's shoulder until she goes,
Yes.
"You got this. You can do
You
it," to go,
got this.
"All right. I
Yes.
can do that." It's the
Yes.
same, it's that reverting back to when we were kids of needing our moms to just be like, "You can do it."
And I
Oh,
think what you're
yes.
really part of what I hear you saying is also this idea of like our parents are still a safe space.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
that our dads and our moms can reassure and help our kids consider. And Lori, a lot of what you said also, I'm hearing myself say the phrase like, all right, so let's consider.
Mhm.
And so even like, so yeah, I said I have my emerging adult sisters living with us. And so the chance to like see her decision making process, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'm like, okay, okay, red light, red light, like, on some of the decisions she's about to make. But hearing myself saying that the phrase of like, okay, so like making decisions about jobs, like, okay, let's consider.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, yep, income is one factor, okay. Schedule, consider flexibility, consider location, and so yeah, it's a matter of we do have life experience that we can help
Right.
offer our kids and help provide information, but I do see that as different than, okay, don't do
Yes.
that. That's like, don't do that. That's a bad idea. It's a
Yeah.
very
Right.
different thing to like, let's consider this and let's consider this. And
Right.
yeah, it's your choice. Like, and that
Mhm.
empowerment you're also talking about of you do have skills. You do have skills that you can use.
You have skills. And even with my
Mhm.
second child, I could say to her, remember when you were able to do this?
Mm.
Okay, think about how you made that decision now. I know this is a big, hard decision, but is there something in this other decision, or is there something that you did before that you can bring to this situation?
Mhm.
Like, so you have two legs to stand on, just
Yes.
helping them recognize they actually do have other tools in their toolbox to help them make these hard decisions.
Mhm.
Okay, I gotta say one more thing. What you are describing and what we are talking about is honestly the way that I try to interact with other adults. Like,
Right?
even if another parent comes to me for advice on something,
Mhm.
okay, let's consider.
Mhm.
Okay. And then I even had a friend one time who said, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, this big, tough parenting moment. I've never done this before. I don't know how to do this. I'm like, hold on. Let's consider the times where you've done this, all the times that
Mhm.
you have practiced patience and grace, all of the times that you have navigated, this and this. And even if it's not this exact
Right.
situation, you have all these skills you can lean back on. And so
You do.
we're really talking about how to parent an adult or how we can interact with other adults too. Like, okay, full circle, bow tied on
Bow
episode.
tied.
That
End of
they're
episode.
adults.
End of
They're
season.
adults. Yeah. And end of season. Oh, end of season.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh man.
Thanks, Ken.
Wah, wah, wah.
That is a great question, though.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great question. And we want to support our emerging and early adult kids. It just looks different than we did how we supported them when they were preschoolers and toddlers
does.
and preteens
Sometimes.
and on. Sometimes different.
And
Sometimes
sometimes
different.
you got this. You can do it. You must be
Yes.
so proud of yourself for what you did there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
well, Thank you, as always, for your
Hmm.
life advice.
Yes. Thank you. So that is our episode on emerging and early adults and how we parent them. And yeah, as Ken's pointed out, and that's our
I'm like-
season.
I'm sitting here thinking, oh man, that's our season. Okay.
So yeah, all season
Exit.
we have. Yeah. All
Exit.
season. Yeah, exit. There it is. All season we've been talking about understanding child development and how that affects how the age of our child affects the way that we parent and interact with them. And yeah, we are kind of wrapping a bow
Mhm.
on for the rest of our lives, right? Like we said, they're kids, and then as they become adults, for the rest of our relationship with them, they will be adults. And so
They
we
will
get this
be.
opportunity to interact with them, that they might have some kind of quirks in these stages of in between, of instability and self-focused and all this stuff, and might feel like their status as an adult is kind of up for debate. But that's just what's true of the emerging adult stage. But we get to be there alongside them, supporting and encouraging through this stage of early adulthood.
We do. So as we go alongside them and they come
Mhm.
alongside us, right? We
Mhm.
want you to come alongside us as well, the Science of Parenting.
Yes.
You can subscribe to our weekly podcasts. You can watch us on video. You can join us on Facebook and Twitter and see us in your feed, right? Just follow us, follow along with us.
Please do. And, this is the end of this season. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break here before the season that we're going to be releasing this summer. But know that there's more good stuff to come. We're going to be talking about parenting in tough times, one of which has been the pandemic. So we're going to do some reflection there. But know that we've got more stuff coming your way on resilience and all of these things that we have going for us as parents that we can tap into in tough times. So please do come along with us as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Lori Kothals and Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.